Okay, so there are these. So at Independence, there are two parks that have been gazetted by the colonial administration. There's the Selous that I mentioned in southern Tanzania, and there's the Serengeti. And under the colonial administration, there was no such thing as like safari tourism or photo safari tourism. These were hunting reserves. The idea was that there are all of these, it's an area of spectacular, beauty and and wild area, but there are also a lot of animals. And historically, what do you do with those? You like hunt them and eat them and use them as a resource. You don't think of like taking pictures of an animal. Photographic tourism uses animals in a different way than like hunting does, obviously. So, at Independence, there had like this photo safari business sort of started in the between World War One and World War Two. People started coming here to just see the spectacular, like part of the reason why we're here, to see the ecosystem that's so different and so unique and special. And there's still like hunting's still allowed in certain areas, but that wasn't the primary use of these areas. So when Tanzania became independent, I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from Julius Nyerere, just because I think that they sort of help you understand sort of his approach as a Tanzanian to these resources. So in 1961, he made a statement called the Arusha Manifesto, and he said, in accepting, so 61, right, that's the year that they become independent. In accepting the trusteeship of our wildlife, we solemnly declare that we will do everything in our power to make sure that our children's grandchildren will be able to enjoy this rich and precious inheritance. So sort of this appeal to like, this is an incredibly unique area, and and it's like has intrinsic value, right? Our responsibility as Tanzanians, but also as like members of the globe, is to make sure that stays around. He says, the conservation of wildlife and wild places calls for specialist knowledge, trained manpower, and money, and we and we look to other nations to cooperate in this important task, the success or failure of which not only affects the continent of Africa, but the rest of the world as well. Right? So in the post-colonial world, he's saying, we recognize that there's value here. We also recognize that we don't really have the capacity at this point to be able to manage it in a way to be sure that it will be sustainable for the future. So we want to partner with other people who have experience, other entities, in the management of these resources. So from independence, conservation in East Africa, in Tanzania, has had this like post-colonial component of European involvement in the management of these resources, which is somewhat unique because they didn't say the same thing about the management of the mineral resources or the water resources, right? So this Arusha Manifesto is like held up in the Western world a lot of times as like, look, this is like this beautiful statement of like partnership between the African African nationalist movement, like Nyerere's movement with the Western world. But then Nyerere also clarified a couple of years later. He said, I personally am not very interested in animals. I don't want to spend holidays watching crocodiles. Nevertheless, I am entirely in favor of their survival. I believe that after diamonds and sisal, wild animals provide Tanganyika with its greatest source of income. Thousands of Americans and Europeans have this strange urge to come and see these animals, right? So it's a very like utilitarian sort of approach. Like I recognize that this is a huge potential economic impact for the country, and so I want to I want to steward this in a way that not only does it benefit the animals, but it also benefits us as a country and our economy. Okay, so at the time, right, like 1963, this land was very sparsely settled. The village of Tinga Tinga, which is out this way, was not here. The village of Miti Mirefu was not here. The village above us of Rosalind was here, but it was very sparsely populated. And this was all pretty much a contiguous landscape that was used mostly by wild animals and by pastoralists, by Maasai who are living and coming through and grazing cattle, and people from Roslyn who are coming down to collect wood for cooking fires and to stay warm. At the same time, it has like a very different sort of history than a place like Serengeti. Serengeti in 1930 was designated as a national park by the British. It was designated as a game reserve in 1930, like a hunting reserve. In 1940, the British decided that actually there are enough other places that we can hunt. We're going to stop hunting in Serengeti because there's something really special here. So 1940 was designated a national park. And at this point, Maasai were still living all through this landscape. But again, the footprint is dramatically lower. So in 1951, as the population was growing and the economy was improving, remember 1951, this is still when this was a British protectorate. The current boundaries of the Serengeti Park were established. They drew these lines and they decided, okay, this is actually not working if we, having people in the park. So in 1951, they forcibly evicted the Maasai who are living in the park. Said you have to move out of this area, and they gave them other areas that were around the perimeters of this ecosystem to live and graze their cattle. Remember, so 1951, it's not long ago. That's like my, living memory for many people who are still here. We may meet, probably very likely will meet people in Kakesio when we go up to stay with the Maasai who have memories as children of growing up living in the middle of Serengeti Park, right? So this is like, it's not that long ago. In 1959, Serengeti, so it used to be, there's the Ngorongoro Conservation Area and Serengeti that are two conservation areas that are adjacent to each other. Serengeti, when it was gazetted, was both of those originally. In 1959, they split those two because of pressure from the Maasai, and they designated Serengeti as an exclusion area. Oh, that's a red-chested cuckoo. Say, it will rain, it will rain, it will rain. So that's another one that you'll hear all the time around here. So add that to your list if you're starting already. So in 1959, they